You are listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my regular weekly guests, and we are all here to share the research, the science, and the strategies, as well as some of the fun, to help you to create a more active life. Welcome to this episode of Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my guest this week, Roxy King. Roxy is a certified menstrual cycle coach. She's a multi-business owner. She does several kind of quite diverse businesses, which we'll talk about a little bit later. She is a best-selling author and speaker, and she specialises in empowering online business owners to embrace, to heal, and to work with their menstrual cycles by unlocking the potential of their natural rhythm. And by doing this, Roxy helps her clients to cultivate thriving health and overall well-being alongside a flourishing business. And I was originally going to say this is definitely one for all the women out there to listen to, but yeah, I think all you men out there need to listen to it as well, because it will give you a clear insight into how our cycles fluctuate and how this impacts on our productivity, our creativity, and yeah, I have to say it, our moods as well. But particularly we're going to focus on in this episode is how we can work our activity, our exercise around our cycles as well. So, Roxy, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this field in the first place.
Well, thank you first for having me on. It's lovely to talk to you. So I first got into this work, like menstrual cycles have never been on my radar. Like I've never had much of a problem with my cycle. I was on the pill for many years, unfortunately, and that just blocks everything. And I had no connection with my cycle. So I never thought, I want to become a menstrual cycle coach. But I happened to see someone that I knew online who was running a group program about reclaiming your menstrual cycle. And it was, this great beta price. And I was like, oh, that's quite intriguing. I think I'll have a look at that. And I signed up, and we'd only done a couple of sessions in this group program. And I was like, well, I'm hooked on this. This is amazing. This is like what I've been waiting for like my whole life. This is what I want to do. And this is like my passion. This is the thing I've been called to do. So I went all in, and I'm trained level 1 and level 2 now, and currently I'm training in natural contraception and fertility as well. So that will be the next kind of string on my bow. But I'm obsessed with everything menstrual cycles, and I love it.
But it's so important, isn't it? And I think it's something that we're becoming much more educated and much more informed about and much more aware of. And this is where people like you can be so helpful, because you can kind of explain to people, say, look, this is why you struggle to make decisions at certain times of the month. This is why you can run all the miles and lift all the weights one week, and then the next week you struggle to lift your water bottle. And I think having an understanding of how our cycles impact us throughout every aspect of everyday life is really, really important, because we can then plan, say, right, okay, say you're an athlete, I've got a big race coming up then. What's my cycle going to be telling me and doing? So we know that it's very common for people to experience fluctuations in energy levels, physical performance and mood throughout the menstrual cycle. So how do our cycles affect us day to day? And then we'll look at how we can plan our activities more effectively. But how do our menstrual cycles affect us, and why?
So it's all to do with different hormone fluctuations and different levels of these different hormones. I won't go into the details because we don't really need to know the details of it. But what I talk about a lot are the 4 inner seasons. So you have 4 main phases to your cycle. And they're also called inner seasons, which I love because they connect so beautifully to like the outer seasons. So you have your inner winter, which is your period, so your menstruation phase. And you can imagine, like, in the outer winter season, you kind of want to retreat a bit, don't you, and to stay warm, and to kind of maybe look after yourself, in different ways. And it's exactly the same with when you're on your period. You don't want to be so much like socializing and out there and doing all the stuff, and you do, and like warmth genuinely does help. So I love the comparison between the outer seasons and the inner season. So you have your inner winter, then you have your inner spring, which is the phase after your period. And then you have your inner summer, which is when you're ovulating, and then your inner autumn, which is the time between your ovulation and your period again. And when we understand these 4 seasons, it's like when I started learning about them, it was like constant light bulb moments. and it just helps you to understand yourself better and to guide you through your life, through like every aspect of your life is affected by your cycle, whether you have like symptoms and challenges, or whether you don't, or whether they're quite big challenges that you're facing, or smaller ones. Everyone is kind of affected to varying degrees. You may just, like I was not connected to my cycle, and it's only now that I look back on my 20s and I'm like, oh yeah, now I can actually see that my cycle was affecting me a bit. But yeah, it affects you in every aspect.
And I think that's it though, isn't it? I think it's it. I think as women, we know we get good days and bad days, and good weeks and bad weeks, but we don't necessarily link it to our cycles, because nobody's ever talked about that. Nobody's ever taught us. Nobody's ever given us the information that actually this does happen. We know that we might get premenstrual, but we just think of, oh, it's premenstrual. We accept it rather than looking at, okay, so what can I do about this? How can I make it work for me instead of against me? And this is where I think the education is so important, whether you're in business or not. But it's important, isn't it, to actually be aware of our cycles, not just to say, oh yeah, we've got a cycle and this is what's going on, but it's tracking how we feel, how we perform, how we behave, how we eat, how we sleep throughout, I'm guessing, not just 1 month. You can't just do it over a month and say, oh, there we go, I know what's going on. But how can you learn to track your cycle so that you can then use it to improve your life, really?
Yeah, so tracking your cycle is incredible. And so there's loads of apps out there that you can use, but I'm not a fan of apps because it's like, I use the Flow app, but it's literally all I use it for is to record when my period is, like, when it turns up and when it finishes. So then I can use that bit of data for my planning of my business and my life. That is it. That's all I use it for. And so I can see like the average length of my cycles, because that's something that I've been trying to make a bit more regular. But the apps, you can put in the symptoms that you're experiencing. I don't like the word symptoms, but like the challenges that you're experiencing. But you just tap, and then it's just forgotten. You're not really connecting. So I don't recommend that people use apps for tracking. I recommend using pen and paper, and there are loads of free trackers out there that you can just print off. I have a free one that people can download. I have one on Amazon as well for like £7. And it's just, it only takes a couple of minutes a day. Like at the end of the day, I do mine. Some of my clients have done it like at the beginning of the day, reflecting on the previous day. And the things that you learn about yourself are just amazing. And you can link it in, like if you do journaling, you can link it in with that as well. And yeah, it's amazing what you learn. So I would encourage anyone who has a cycle to track. It's amazing.
Do you think it's important for women who are, I was just going to say, do you think it's important for women who are postmenopausal, who are aware that they still have a cycle? Do you think it's important for them to track it? Obviously, you can't track when your period is, but you can track other things that are going on, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can, if you track, you'll see patterns like you would do for anyone who is still having a cycle. You will still see those patterns emerge. So you might find when you're tracking. One of my clients, she found that like on day 19 was just a complete write-off for her. So we were like, okay, well, don't have anything like forward client facing on those days. Don't do one-to-ones on those days. Schedule in massages for that day, or going for a nice walk, just gentle things and nothing stressful. And yeah, you can still find those patterns even once your cycle and your periods have finished. You still have those. It's still worth tracking for sure, and you can track with the moon as well, which is really fascinating.
Gosh, that's a whole other episode actually. But I know a few weeks back I was talking
to
somebody, Nicole. Check out the episode if you do. But we were actually talking about ADHD and things like that. But she actually said, I now work with my cycle, and she said there are days and weeks where I know do not make any big business decisions or personal decisions on these days. It's just not going to happen. But she also said that she's found that her physical activity, and she works with a personal trainer, and she's almost had to educate her personal trainer and say, right, during these phases, I'm going to need gentle relaxation, stretching, simple stuff, whereas in these phases I can go for it. And I think that's something as well that is really, really important for us to understand, isn't it? And you mentioned the 4 seasons or the 4 phases. How do these impact what we can do physically, and how can we adapt that and use that and make our activity more beneficial, more productive?
Yeah, so if I go through the four seasons and give you some examples of what is best for each season, you'll be able to see, what suits your body best and how you can just tweak things. So you're in a winter, so your menstruation phase when you're on your period, and it's worth noting that this season can last a couple of extra days after your period as well. It's not like you suddenly switch from inner winter to inner spring. You might need a couple of days there to ease into the inner spring. So inner winter, it's light movement and rest, like meditative walking, foam rolling, restorative yoga, stretching, and breath work. So you can see it's a lot softer. And if you these aren't like hard and fast rules. I did a bit of weight training the other day when I was on my period, just because I had like all this energy, and I was like, I just feel like doing a little bit of light work with some light weights, and that's okay. I just don't do anything that involves kind of, be gentle with your core kind of area. Don't put any extra strain on that. But I was like, I've got this energy. I need to do something with my arms. But yeah, so keep it nice and light anyway during your inner winter. Then going into your inner spring, you can do some running, hiking, biking, dancing, swimming, and flow-based kind of feminine yoga. So you're not going all out, but just kind of ramping it up a bit. Then into your inner summer, when you're ovulating, you can really go for it, like with HIIT workouts and spin classes, boot camps, group classes, and full on dancing. this is where you want to push, if you're going for a PB, this is when you go for your PB. Don't try and go for your PB
Right.
during your premenstrual phase and when you're on your period. And the thing is, if you are overdoing it in those phases, you're going to have less energy and strength in like your inner summer and inner spring. So that's where you need to be careful as well.
Just before we talk about the autumn phase, you mentioned PB's personal best. Do you think that could equally apply to work, where you really go for your professional best in the kind of late in the spring, in the summer? That's maybe where you're more productive professionally as well as physically.
Yes.
Interesting, yeah. So tell us about autumn, the autumn phase.
So in autumn, the first half is great for like strength training, put the teeth in. And then the second half, you want to ease off a bit and start to slow down. So walking, gentle yoga, stretching, and Pilates. Those sorts of things are best. And then, you're back into your inner winter. So you can see there's this whole like cycle that goes. And this is why I get irritated like with fitness apps. Like I have a fitness app that I love it, but there's no accounting for my cycle, for being a woman. So I tend to only use it for a couple of weeks in a month. And then I'm like, okay, I need to change things up here and kind of slow down again.
But this is just, you said you had light bulbs. I've got light bulbs going off here because, there are times where, because we tend to say, right, I don't go to the gym 3 times a week. People say, right, I'll go to the gym, I'll do my cardio, I'll do my weights, I'll do this, I'll do that. But this is my routine. And there are some days where you just, I just don't feel like doing it. I don't want to do it. And I go along and I force myself, and it's just, never mind personal best, it's personal worsts and things. And I think to me, it sounds like being in tune with your cycle means you plan. You say, right, these are the weeks I go for it. These are the weeks I do my yoga, my Pilates, my gentle walking. These are the weeks I do my fast walking. This is when I do my running. And by having that, you never feel I'm not in the mood, because you've planned what you're going to be physically and emotionally in the mood for. And that means you're more likely to do it. Because if you're in, I'm just saying, the winter phase, and you've planned to go and do a 5K, chances are you're going to resent every step of it. Whereas if you plan to do a really gentle yoga and stretch session, you'll just get so much more out of it. So it's like, instead of having a fitness program, an exercise program, you've got kind of 4 that you just sequence through. And like you say, if you do want to do something a bit different, you can. It's not like you can't. But by working with your cycle rather than trying to force your way through it, it's going to be much, much more productive, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you imagine as well, like if you went into the gym and tried to do a PB in your inner autumn, when you're just about to start your period and you don't have a lot of energy in that, and you don't hit that PB, or you're trying to go for a run and you can't run as far as you had planned to, then you're like, oh, well, what a failure I am, how useless. And you get all this like negative talk and negative energy. You're like, well, you weren't giving yourself the best chance, and your body, that's not what your body needed at that time. And I know that if I overdo it, exercise wise and work wise, in my inner autumn, then it's going to lead me to having so many issues within my inner winter. Like if I don't look after myself in my inner autumn, come my period, I'm going to be bent over with horrendous period cramps, and I'm going to be exhausted, not be able to do anything. If I look after myself, I have no period challenges whatsoever. I only know I'm on my period really because I've got my period, and I have no discomfort, no pain. I have plenty of energy because I look after myself, and I honor each of the inner seasons, and I don't overdo it in my inner autumn. And stress is linked to that as well. I mean, I lost my gran a few months ago, and that has affected my cycle a bit. I can feel that, and I have had some period pain because of that, because of the stress and the grief and everything. So, it's, you have to look after yourself throughout your cycle, and your body will be better off for it. It will thank you for it.
It just makes so much sense, and I think it's something that we kind of almost we've been conditioned to think of it as an inconvenience every month, rather than part and parcel of life that we need to adjust and work with, the same as we adjust to the weather, we adjust to the temperature. Like I'm sitting here right now in a vest and a jumper and all sorts of warm clothes because we're coming into winter in the UK, whereas Roxy sat there in a t-shirt because she lives at the other end of the world and she's coming into summer, which means presumably as well, I mean, anyone who knows me knows that I'm huge promoter of getting outside and being active outside, but also the fact that the actual nature seasons impact on us. And I'm always saying to people, in the winter we want to be doing more gentle stuff, go for walks, do the stretching, do all of this, think of it as nourishing and nurturing your body, and then you're getting ready for the spring where you're kind of speeding up again. So I suppose it's a very small version of that. Instead it's weekly rather than quarterly. And it just makes so much sense that we do that. And I'm sure there's going to be people out there thinking, gosh, that might explain why I did so well on that run. And yet 2 weeks later when I did the same run, it was awful. And it's really looking at things like that. And if you are going for a personal best, then time it so that you're taking advantage of where you are in your cycle. How long? You mentioned tracking, and if you've got a tracker on Amazon, send me the details because we'll pop that up for people. But how long does it take before you really start to see that rhythm of the cycle, that pattern?
3 cycles really. But I mean, from when you start tracking, you will be amazed at what you uncover. And just writing things down, this does happen quite often to me. I do feel like this, and before you may not have registered it, but by writing it down, even just briefly, you're not talking about writing paragraphs and paragraphs. It's just a few lines, and you can kind of come up with your own little shorthand and stuff as well, But yeah, so 3 cycles really to get a good understanding, and then just keep going with it, and then you can look back on your previous cycles, and when you start seeing the different patterns, it's amazing, yeah. And seeing, I write down, if it's been someone's birthday and I've eaten some cake, maybe a bit too much cake, then I will write that down, because then I can see how that affects me as well, or if I've had a few cocktails on the weekend, I'll write that down. So give it at least three cycles.
Do you find that what you eat and drink then also impacts on, or rather our cycles have an impact on how we react to things, that maybe we crave certain foods at certain times, or that maybe alcohol has a bigger impact on at certain times? Because I know I've read that before. I know that our metabolism shifts slightly in the week before, but we talk about the menstrual munchies and things. It's not quite that straightforward, is it? But is that worth tracking then, what you eat, what you drink, and how it made you feel, or how it impacted on you? Because I think that would really help with people planning business activities, fitness activities and things like that as well, is knowing, right, this is a week where if I drink alcohol, then I know it's going to have a bigger impact on me than if I don't. And if you've got a big decision or you've got something coming up, you might want to say, actually, do you know what, I'm going to cut back purely because I know the impact it will have on me will affect my decision-making process.
Yeah, so for the 4 inner seasons, I have a list of different foods that you can eat, foods that are best for you for the different seasons. So, for example, like in a winter, you want to be eating more protein and healthy fats and really focus on nutrient dense foods, especially things containing iron. You need to replenish yourself there. Then into your inner spring, it's like fresh, light foods. And, imagine what you would eat in like the outer seasons. What do you feel like when it's cold and snowy? You feel like warm foods. So have nice warm foods like in your inner winter. Then when you come into your inner spring, think like, and your inner summer as well, think like salads, and raw foods, lighter foods, anti-inflammatory foods as well help within your inner summer. And then as you come into your inner autumn, this is probably when you're going to have those cravings. So you need to focus on like real blood sugar balancing and nutrient dense foods. It's really important in this time. And be careful with how much sugar you are consuming. You can consume like 250 to 300 extra calories per day during this time. And that's why you're having people often have those cravings during this time. But, don't think, I can have an extra 300. Yeah, I can have some cake. No. Focus on the good stuff. And it's that going back into the warm foods again. I was working with a lovely client, and she was like, it was midsummer in the UK, and it was during the heat wave last year. And she's like, I just want a stew. And this is ridiculous. It's so hot. I was like, well, you're in your inner winter, and your body is wanting that warmth. So we came up with a plan that, because she didn't want to be stood over the stove making a stew in the middle of a heat wave, and her husband didn't want to have the stew. So she was going to, when it cooled down a bit, she was going to batch cook some stew and pop it in the freezer. And then she could just, bring it out when her body was wanting that warmth. But it wasn't the best time to be cooking the warm food. So, it's so important what you eat. And it does affect you.
But it's just, again, what we eat really has an impact on so many things, on our emotions, on how our body functions, everything, digestive system, a lot. So again, it just makes sense to track where, gosh, I ate this, and this, and I felt sluggish, and I was a bit constipated or whatever. And my energy levels were really low, and when I tried to go out. So it's just really putting it all together, isn't it? And thinking, right, okay, this is where I need this kind of thing. Planning and preparation, which again is so important, isn't it? That we're aware of it, that we plan for it, and we don't deny ourselves the cake, but we say, right, during this week, it's going to have a bigger impact on me, so I'll have less, or I'll just have a small amount. I'll be careful. And I think, do you think as well that decision making is affected? Because I know sometimes when we're thinking about what we're going to eat and what we're going to do, it's sometimes we can make big decisions just fall out of us all the time, and other times it's like, which colour t-shirt shall I wear, and it takes you about 3 hours to decide on which t-shirt, and you take the one off and you put another one on, and no, I don't like that one. So do you think that that's the sort of thing that is impacted as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm chuckling because I'm thinking that, so I have some battles with anxiety, less so nowadays, thankfully. But I know if my anxiety is going to rear its ugly head, it is going to be in my inner autumn, and that is going to affect my decisions.
Right.
And I'm probably, what I wear is going to be affected, because I'll kind of want to shrink away a little bit. But like in my inner spring, where I've got more confidence, more outgoing, feeling a bit sexy, I've got that extra confidence to wear whatever I want and not give a hoot about what anyone thinks about it. So yeah, it definitely affects everything. And the other thing that I should have mentioned before as well, when we were talking about the food and things and how it affects you, is you with tracking you might learn some very specific things that affect how you are feeling as well. So for me, it's tea. I will not drink tea during the first 3 days of my period, because I will get instant cramps, because it affects the iron absorption.
Really?
And that's what causes cramps. Yeah. So avoid, if you get cramps on your period, I would urge anyone to try avoiding tea and coffee and booze, and avoid booze in the lead up to your period as well. And if you have really heavy periods, avoid booze, and track it and see what happens. So alcohol can increase your period flow, and if you're experiencing having heavy periods, then ease off and track it, see what happens. But that's the beauty of tracking.
It's really
you might be able
interesting.
to pinpoint these exact things.
That's really interesting, because I know, coming back to activity and exercise is, if you've got a very heavy period, you just don't want to do anything. And it may well be that the things that you're eating and drinking are actually contributing to that, or to the cramps and things like that. And again, this is where having different activities planned means you're more likely to do it. Right. Oh, this is my slow week. Great. I'm going to go off and do all the lovely slow things. Or this is my speeding up a bit week. I'm looking forward to getting outside and doing a bit more. And having those plans, for me, as I said, there are times where trying to decide what to wear will just take me forever, and I'll be putting things on and taking them off and just discontent. And those are the days where I've learned, and I'm going to start tracking it and see where it is in my cycle. But I've learned now, if I have everything ready the night before, I don't go through that, because I've made the decision, I've prepared. But other times, it's, even just deciding what to eat, I end up grabbing something ridiculous because I can't make up my mind. And I will meal plan now so that I don't have to make that decision. I'll batch cook foods so that I've got my lunch ready for every single day. I haven't got to make that decision. And I think the more I think about it, the more I've been thinking about it recently, is I know that is linked into my cycle somehow, but I don't know how. So this is where tracking could be really, really helpful for me, because it will give me that extra information that I can say, right, I do want to go and do some weightlifting. I'm in the mood for it. I'm in the right time frame for it. So I'm going to go and do it. And other days it will be, I'm not going to push myself to do that today, because that's not what my body needs. It's not what my body wants. And I'm just more and more, I'm so kind of intrigued by the power of nature generally, but this is kind of like we're our own little microcosm of nature over a month rather than a year. And it's just so interesting to hear about how we do with activities, because I think people do get really upset, like you said, but normally I can run this far in this time, and I wasn't anywhere near it. And it's nothing to do with your actual fitness level. It's to do with everything else that's going on, that's using up the energy that you would actually need for running. It's not there because your body's doing stuff internally that is taking that energy up. And I just feel that that's such an important thing to do, particularly for people who are quite regular exercisers. But just bringing it back a little bit to people who want to get into exercise and activity, who are not active at the moment, who are kind of a little bit nervous, a little bit anxious about being active, how could they use this sort of information to start being more active in their everyday life?
I guess you can just look at what start tracking, look at what season you are in, see what's going to fit best for that season. Check in with yourself, like, what do you feel like doing? I have a cycle check-in that I do each morning, so I check to see what day I'm on. I check in to see how I'm feeling, like, emotionally and physically? Do I feel strong today? Do I feel really tired? Like if I had rubbish sleep because of my kids, what is going on? And then I kind of base my day off that and think, okay, so I'm on cycle day. What am I on today? 11 today. So I'm in my inner spring. It's been a stressful week, but so I don't feel like overdoing it. But I feel like going out and going for I can go for a walk on the beach today because it's nice, and I can just go for a nice walk. That's what I'm feeling called to do. So really like tune in with what your body is telling you and how you're feeling.
And that's, can I just say, when Roxy goes for a walk, she sees penguins. Because Roxy lives in the Falkland Islands, and there are quite a lot of penguins there. And I have to say, I'm so jealous. I love penguins. I absolutely love them. Anyway, one of the things I think people might be listening to and thinking, gosh, learning to track my cycle is going to take me so long. Does it take a long time? Because, most of us live quite pressurized lives already. How much realistically, you say it takes about 3 cycles, how long each day would you spend just tracking?
I track for about 5 minutes in the evening when I get into bed at night, and then I will do my little cycle check-in first thing in the morning, which takes 2 minutes or something. It's really not. It's not a lot. And if you want to, dive deeper into it, you can like come into my world and you can learn from me. And I do, one-to-one coaching with people, so we really dive deep into helping them. And but you can just give it a couple of minutes each day. It doesn't have to be this big thing, but what you'll get from it, it sounds so cliche, but it could be like life-changing. It really could, because your cycle is affecting every single part of your day. So just being mindful of it, and learning about you and your cycle. You're not just, by tracking, you're not just going to learn about your cycle. You're going to learn about you as well. I know me so much better nowadays. And it can help your relationships as well. My marriage is stronger because of it. I can say to my husband, like, "Whew, my anxieties, it's beating me today. So, sorry, I'm a bit crabby today, but my period is about to start. Or, God, I feel better today because my period has started." And he like checks in. He's like, "Oh, what cycle day are you on? And has your period started yet? How are you feeling?" And like that communication is just amazing. And I teach my boys about it as well. They're 5 and 6, and I'm like, Mummy's not feeling great today, and this is why. Or even, Mummy's got loads of energy because I'm, this part of my cycle. So let's go do something fun. It's amazing how it can help. Just like that awareness. It's really, really empowering. Learning about your cycle is empowering.
And I think that's a perfect place to stop. But I do just want to say, I think it is so important that we do educate children, we educate men, grandparents, everybody, because it's always been a bit of a taboo subject. And I think it's something that is so natural. And everybody needs to understand that it impacts on us, not just us as women, but it impacts on the people around us. It impacts on our decision making, our emotions, everything. And if we're all kind of, if everybody around you is aware, then it just makes life so much easier, doesn't it? It's like, okay, right, not the best time for us to be making decisions as a family. Let's leave it till next week or the week after, or let's actually, it might be that we've got to make this decision. How can we actually make it easier, bearing in mind where my cycle is and things? So I just think it's such an important topic. It's such an important subject. And I think anybody who wants to get in touch with you, I know will really, really benefit from learning about their cycle, particularly if you are a business businesswoman who wants to know much more about really sort of when to show up on social media and be really sort of vibrant and everything, and when actually, no, this is my planning week. This is where I'm going to sit down and do all my evaluations. This is where I'm going to be out there chatting to everybody. This is when I'm going to make decisions. This is when I'm just going to sit and plan and evaluate and analyse. But thank you so much for coming along. As I say, it's a really important topic. I've got your links if people want to follow you. It's Roxy King, all one word, .coach. And I will make sure that I'll put the link for your tracker on Amazon in there as well. And I think I'm going to get it because I think it'll be useful for me. And it's something I keep wanting to do, but I don't know where to start. So having something on paper that I can start with is going to be really helpful. Is there anything you just want to finally add before we leave?
Oh, anything. I would just encourage anyone to, track your cycle, tune in with your body, and there's a lot to learn with your cycle. It's never too late to learn. I wish that I'd known about all this, earlier on. I wish it didn't take me until I was like my mid-30s and thinking, oh gosh, menopause is probably around the corner and I haven't got much time. But it's never too late. Because it can help you from the get-go. Just learn one little thing at a time, implement one thing at a time, and it's just amazing. And I guarantee you'll be like, why didn't they teach us this at school? And why isn't this talked about more? It's amazing. So thank you so much for having me on, Sarah, so we can talk about this.
Oh.
Yeah, it's maddening.
Thank you for coming along. You've been listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Bolito, and my amazing guest all the way from the Falkland Islands, Roxy King. So I will make sure all her links are available for you. And as I say, just let's all get more in tune with ourselves, our cycles, and move on from there. Thank you all very much. Thank you for listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Bolito, and my guests. Join me each week for more on how to create and sustain everyday activity, and follow me online at Fitness Career Mentor or Fabulous if you're interested in career development and more on creating active lifestyles.